This segment of the Bass, Kayak, and Beers podcast is sponsored in part by Dark Horse Tackle. Go to darkhorsetackle.com and use promo code BKB5 to save an extra $5 when you build your own box. Douglas Outdoors. Serious rods for serious anglers. Norsk Lithium. The lithium kayak battery you need is just a click away. Go to norsklithium.com. Catch Outdoors, the official measuring board for all 3 national trails. Go to catchoutdoors.com and use promo code BKB5 to save 5% on your next online purchase.
What is going on, everyone? I hope you're all having a great Thursday. If you give me a second here we go. Got to share the live show. So if you're watching or on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, feel free to leave your comments. We'll do our best to get them answered by today's guest, which is none other than JR Mocaby. If you don't know JR Mocaby, in my opinion, one of the top anglers here in Texas. He doesn't do a lot of the national stuff, but if he does, he would definitely earn some checks. On Instagram, we got Super New F71 Evening watching from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Thank you so much for watching. We do appreciate it. If you have any questions, please leave your comments. We'll try to do our best to get our Jacob, keep saying Jacob, JR, or myself to answer your questions. We're going to be talking about the West Texas Kayak Fishing Tournament. It was held in conjunction with the Bass Nation in Texas. Jacob only did the West Texas. He didn't do the Bass Nation, but it was both at the same lake, and he ended up getting the biggest 5-man limit for the tournament. So even though he didn't take part in the Texas Bass Nation, but again, it's 2 tournaments held in conjunction, and who better to break down the lake than our winner JR Mocaby. So let's bring JR onto the stage. JR, how you doing, man?
Hey, pretty good. How you doing, Armando?
Pretty good. Thank you so much for taking the time to come up to the podcast. By the way, Jacob, I've been meaning to ask you. Keep saying Jacob. Why do I keep saying Jacob?
Man.
But that brings me to my point. JR. What does JR stand for?
Stands for John Robert.
I was hoping it would be Jacob Robert.
No.
Be screwing it up.
Right. No. John Robert.
John Roberts. John Roberts. JR. Thank you so much again for taking time to come up to the podcast. Congratulations on an amazing win at the West Texas Kayak Fishing Tournament Series. I mean it when I say it, man. I've watched you fish the Lone Star Throwdown and win it. I've watched you fish many local trails and win. We actually, I don't know if you remember, the first ever tournament that I did was it wasn't my first, but it was the first time I participated in the KBBT. You remember that?
Oh, yes.
Greg Nosar. So
Right.
when they were doing the drawing for who was going to go against who, I ended up being matched with you. And I was like, well, I don't know them. The rest were like, I don't know if Guillermo Salas was there, but I think Matthew Scotch was there. Ross Pinkerton was there. Jeff Eisen was there. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know who this JR Mocaby is, but I know he's not one of the top anglers, as I thought at that time, because I know all the other names, but I don't know his. But now you put a beat down that day on me. I fished Fork. I don't remember where you fished, but you
That was the Choke Canyon.
Choke Canyon. I think you got like 89 inches.
Yeah, 89 and a half, I think is what it was. It's
Yeah.
kind of weird how we remember those certain limits, so far back.
I know, but it was fun. It was my first time fishing that trail. I ended up getting a big one, about 18-incher in the first hour, and then I didn't get anything else. But that's how we met, at least online.
Right.
I think I met you one of the local trails last year.
I think so. I believe so. But yep, I do remember that well.
How How did you get started in kayak? Let's first of all, how do you get started in bass fishing and then into kayak bass fishing? I'm assuming you transitioned bass fishing first.
Absolutely. So, I've had a rod in my hand ever since I was 5 years old. My dad owned a bass boat, and I started out doing some pan fishing, crappie, bluegill, I guess, to kind of get my patience where it needs to be for bass fishing. And then, transitioned into bass fishing and started doing some tournaments here and there with him out of the boat throughout my childhood. And we've won some tournaments together and had some good memories. And back in 2017, I moved to San Antonio, Texas, down here. And I didn't have, the option of having a bass boat over here. So kayaks was the next best thing. And I had already owned one, just a cheaper one, just to get my feet wet, and fell in love with it. I don't really want to get into bass boats. I love the kayak side of things, and just a lot less headache, maintenance, all sorts of things. But very thankful I jumped into it and really enjoy it. It's just a lot more peaceful way of getting out there. But and then I got my first Hobie around 2018, and that's kind of when I really started getting heavy into tournaments, kayak tournaments.
How many tournaments you think you won?
Kayak tournaments, maybe 5 or 6, and then I've had a handful of top 3s, top 5s. But yeah, I think I've only won 5 or 6 ever since I've moved to Texas.
How would you describe in one word your kayak fishing tournament experience? Like in the sense of your results, right? Like how would you rank yourself? I guess that's the question I'm asking.
Like, as you mean in terms of like competition or style wise, or
competition? Like if you have to think about Guillermo Gonzalez, Matthew Scott, Jim Marshall, all those great ones, where would you rank yourself as far as? And I ask you that because I firmly believe you're one of the top anglers in Texas, but you don't really do the national shows. But how would you rank yourself?
I would say somewhere in the top 20. Hopefully, I would love to be up there with those kind of guys. I think
Easily in the top 20.
Well, that's just me being humble, then, I guess, because I know this sport can give you a humble pie real quick. So, yeah, I mean, I try to do as many events as I can and try to be on the water as much as possible, because that, obviously helps you out and being versatile. And, as well as I do, we go all over Texas and have a very diverse fisheries, and you can't just be good at one thing. So I try to get out and dabble in a little bit of everything, and I think that helps me out, being able to adjust on the fly, if you will.
What do you think is your biggest strength as an angler?
My biggest tournament win?
No, it's your strength. What do you feel is your biggest strength?
My strength, definitely reaction. Shallow water, muddy water, stained water. I can fish clear water. It's not my preference, but I think that'd be like, as far as my strength's definitely reaction, trying to get those fish to react and bite instead of kind of slow fishing here and there.
What do you think would be your biggest weakness?
Finesse. Yeah, I don't really ever finesse rod, to be honest. I take 1 or 2 depending on where I'm going, but I rarely ever touch them. I just feel like I can get fish to bite the way I want them to bite, and usually they're better fish because of what I'm throwing and what I'm targeting them at.
Interesting. You ever had a tournament where you wish you would have thrown something finesse, or does it ever cross your mind?
There's definitely been times where I look back and I'm like, man, I was just too stubborn, and so stubborn that I should have, either downsized or went to something finesse. And there's plenty of days like that. I wish I would have did it, but it is what it is. We learn sometimes, and sometimes we don't.
We live and die by the power.
Yes.
Mantra. Let's talk a little bit about Brownwood tournament that just came up in West Texas. I'm sure you're kicking yourself for not double dipping, because that would have earned you a pretty good check. You won the West Texas kayak fishing trail. I think you're. I'm looking it up right now. You had 101 inches. By the way, that lake showed out. Like, I think the top. We were just talking about it. Like, the top 3 fish caught were like a 26 and a half, but only counted as a 26 plus incher, but only was measured 26 inches officially because the board was only 26 inches, but the tail was sticking out a good half an inch, maybe 3/4 inch. So it would have scratched 27 incher. So if you ever buying a catch board or a measuring board, make sure you get the 32 incher, not the 26 incher,
Mhm.
because there may be that time when you wish you had that. Then I think the second one, I think it was like something like a 25 and a half, and then a 24 and a half. What was your thoughts on that lake?
It was a wild lake, man. I didn't really expect those kind of fish to be turned in, and it might just be a lack of my research and knowledge on the lake. I had never seen the lake, never been to it before, didn't get no pre-fishing, so I went in with a clear mind and no preconceived notions of anything. And maybe that was my saving grace there. But um, I love the lake. It couldn't leave a better first impression on me. It's definitely got a lot of big fish, and it definitely showed out, that day. And when I started hearing about 26s and 25s caught, I really knew I had to have a huge limit, like a 100-inch limit, to kind of even do something. So I enjoyed the lake. I think it's healthy. It was low when we fished it. I don't know if any rain has made it rise any, but it was a little low. I think it was like 8 or 9 foot low when we were there.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, West Texas is well, it has rained a lot. I was actually in well, towards West Texas today fishing on a lake, and we almost got caught in like a huge hailstorm. We actually managed to get out of the water before the hail started falling. So I think they may be going up since then because we've had a lot of rain over the week. Um, but yeah, I've never heard of Brownwood. I've never fished it. Is it your typical West Texas lake where it's no grass, mostly rocky ledges and sandbars?
Yeah, for the most part, I did hear some people found some grass patches depending on where you're at on the lake, but for the most part, it was all riprap, rocky banks.
Lay downs, yeah.
Yeah, had some docks here and there, but for the most part, is your typical West Texas lake. A little bit of timber, a little bit of brush, and a lot of rock.
It's crazy. One of the things that I was thinking today while I was fishing is just the drastic differences between West Texas and East Texas. As far as the geographically, and
Yeah.
applying it to the lakes, East Texas is just pure grass. West Texas is like hardly any grass, if any. Um, a lot clearer water, a lot deeper reservoirs. For the most part, right? In general, there's always the outlier here and there. Which one do you actually prefer more, like grassy East Texas lake or West Texas rocky ledges lake?
If I had it my way, I'd always be on a grass fishery or a shallow fishery in general. The West Texas has really kind of made me fish a little bit different than what I'm used to, and that maybe has made me a better angler. But typically they're a little bit clearer, a little bit deeper, and not a whole lot of cover at times, depending on when you go there. But yeah, if I had it my way, I would definitely be on a East Texas, shallow water fishery, grass fishery.
Going back to Brownswood, what do you think was the the I guess the biggest factor for those big, like 26, like we mentioned, not just one, like a 26 inch, a 20 and a half, 25 and a half, a 24, 24 and a half. Was there anything related to the weather or anything like that that kind of contributed to all this big bass showing out, or is it just pure talent on the field?
No, I think, well, that too. I mean, we had a lot of good guys out there, a lot of good talent, nothing to take away. But, I think the two main factors were we had some fronts move in the night before and kind of during the tournament. And we had a shad spawn going on. So anytime you have those kind of conditions when fish are up there eating and feeding and you got fronts and pressurized different, moving through, just makes them react. And I think with those two factors really allowed that lake to show out.
Yeah, it was amazing. I've never seen results like that. It wasn't like you had 101 inches, right? But so we obviously seen more of that to win a tournament here in Texas.
Mhm.
But I've never seen, I've seen multiple 24 inches, maybe one 25 incher, but I've never seen like such top heavy as far as big bass goes. Um, what what do you make the difference for you to, pull up 101 inches and win this tournament?
Like I said, I went into this tournament without any pre-fishing, and never had seen the lake before. So I just had a fresh mind, a clear mind to go in and literally just fish the conditions. Even at the ramp, as we're getting ready to head out, we launch, and I'm still not really sure where I'm starting. I'm kind of seeing where everyone else is going, so I can kind of, figure out where I want to go. And I knew where the wind was blowing. We had a southwest wind, I believe, or southeast wind. It was. So I wanted to target the northwest banks, if you will. I wanted to stay in that wind all day because I knew that's where they would be chewing, if there was a good reaction bite. And that's the bank I started on. And honestly, I got into some white bass real early, and I thought it was all bass popping off, and I'm sitting there waiting before lines in, and I'm like, man, let's go. These fish are active. But it turns out a lot of them were just white bass. And I quickly got out of that little area because I just figured, yeah, there's probably bass mixed in, but they're having to compete with these little white bass that are fast and, hard to get away from. But so I got out of that area and went up the river a little ways where I'd launched, and went down this bank line with some top waters. I was throwing a whopper plopper. And in those conditions with a little bit of chop, you got to have the right amount of chop because, otherwise if it's too windy, it's not really effective. But it had a good chop blowing into these boulders and rock banks, if you will. And I caught that 22 3/4. That was my first fish, actually. So once I had, experienced that, I was like, uh-oh, this is the first bass I'm catching. This lake's going to be on, So I go down about, 20 or 30 yards, and I hear like these shad flickering. And I didn't even know at this point that that's what was going on. But I found a floating dock. And I come up on it, and I'm fishing, honestly, on the bank, and I hear some busting up under there, and I'm like, ooh, some fish are busting up under there. And I grabbed a 6-inch swim bait and slung it up under there, and the first cast, one just annihilated it. And I got it on GoPro and whatnot, and that was that 19-incher, I believe it was. So then that kind of clued me into like, oh, these are bass up under here, and there's big bass feeding. And so I just kept that 6-inch swim bait in my hand, kept skipping it up under there in certain little lanes, because the way those floating docks were, you only had certain little lanes you could skip up into. And you had to be really accurate to get it up under there, because there's only about, maybe half a foot you had to get up, or less sometimes. So skipping it up under there and reeling it real fast through there, they were just reacting and coming unglued. And I caught a 16 something right after that one, a couple casts later, and I was like, oh man, this is awesome. They're eating right now. I got to take advantage. And kept sticking with that bait for a while up under there. And I think I caught another 19 or something. And I was like, wow, this is going down. And I kind of looked at the leaderboard a little bit to get an idea of what everyone else was doing, because I submit my fish right when I get them. Just because I don't want the chance of something happening down the road or in the day where my phone goes overboard or something.
Yeah.
So I always try to submit if I've got signal. And looked at the leaderboard and was up there quick, and I seen some other big fish caught, so I knew, I was like, man, I can't stop. It's going down right now. But that little 6-inch swim bait clued me in on really what I needed to be doing and what I needed to target that day. And I really only found 2 docks like that, 2 magical docks that held multiple 19 or better inch fish.
Wow.
So I kept like doing a milk run back and forth between those 2. And trying to get every little last inch I could out of them, being a single day tournament, you're just going to hammer them. And kept working my way down, and it kind of died down for a little bit. And then I made a long run somewhere else to kind of let those 2 areas rest, and went way up the river, and it got real stained, and I didn't like the watercolor, and it just got super shallow. So I started heading back a couple hours in, and I was catching fish here and there, but they weren't no coal fish. They were like 15s and 14s, and I'm just chucking them back. And I'm like, man, what do I got to do? Let me go back to those docks. And I went back midday, and I think I caught a 19 something. And then after that one, I catch a 20 and a half. And I'm like, man, that fish right there just put me over the century mark. And it was just like a breathtaking moment. I'd never hit the century mark. And it was just
really.
Never in pre-fish, fun fish, tournament fish. No, I had never hit that on a single day. So to do that in a tournament that I'd, never fished that lake, never seen the lake, never pre-fished, it was just a special, special deal.
I would have bet my bottom dollar that you have multiple occasions where you hit 100 inches
No.
based on the results. By the way, that was showing pictures if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook of your biggest one. That underlip really
Yeah.
took that fish from 20 inches to 22 and a half
Mhm.
inches. That little bubba fish right there. That was your
He
biggest one. Did
yes, he
that
got
came under the docks as well? You said?
no, that one surprisingly, that one was up on the bank feeding up on them rocky banks. So that was the only fish that I caught that was in my limit at the end of the day on the bank. Everything else was on a floating dock off the bank.
I wanted to also show now that we're showing the video, the pictures of the fish you caught. The one that were kind of, I was laughing. Um, the one that Jacob
Oh yeah.
got second place. If you look at, for those that are watching, this is the the definition of a spawn out female. Look at that big old head and look how skinny. This fish is almost paper thin and it's 24 and a half. And I'm willing to bet this fish didn't, if he would have, Jacob would have weighted it, it wouldn't weigh more than two pounds.
Yeah, I think he was on KBN's podcast. I think he said he caught I think he weighted at 5 something if I'm not mistaken.
This one?
Yeah, I think that's what he said.
Really?
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I think that's what it was.
Wow. That is crazy. Look how spun out that is. That
Yeah,
and by the scars in it, this is an old
that's an
warrior.
old beat up fish. Yeah.
Yeah, so that fish has seen a lot of things and a lot of hooks. So um, it's always, that's the ones that you always want to do catch and release, right? Like
Oh yeah.
they've earned the release. Plus, it probably wouldn't taste very good. That fish that old, that big.
Absolutely.
Um, You know, something that I want to go back on is your ability to go into a tournament on a lake if you've never been. And by the way, just to recap, you mentioned that you're more of an East Texas style lake. That's your preference. Like this lake was not like, well, it's kind of your wheelhouse. It's kind of
Mhm.
what you're used to. No, this is a lake you've never been to before. You've never fished before. You didn't get a chance to pre-fish, and also it's not your favorite type of lake to fish. Yet you managed to break 100 inches for the first time. And the point that I wanted to make on it, this only happens, in my opinion, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, with somebody that, like you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, that has been bass fishing since they were 5 years old. Like me, I started bass fishing 5 years ago.
Mhm.
As good as I may get, or I'm as good as I may progress. There's nothing to substitute like experience. And you and I may do a tournament. I may pre-fish it, kind of figure it out, and maybe I'll be fortunate enough to uh, get a bigger limit than you are. But I would never be able, at least not at this stage of my learning, uh, that going to a lake that I've never fished in my life and without pre-fishing and actually put up 100 inches. That only happens with when you really born into this. Like your father, maybe your grandfather, like second, third, fourth generation bass fisherman. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, like you said, there's really no substitute for time on the water and experience. That's where you learn everything. I mean, yeah, we can sit here all day and every night and watch fishing videos and stuff, but until we go apply this information and go, get our own results, we can't really do it. So, I think time on the water is the most important thing. So, if you're not doing that and having the experience, it's really hindering your ability, to go out there and succeed. But
Is this the first time you've ever won a tournament without no pre-fishing uh, or a history on a lake?
no, surprisingly, no. I actually statistically do a lot better when I don't
Really?
pre-fish. Yeah, 100%. It's weird. It should be the other way around, but no, it's. I think I just go in with a clear head and I just go fish the conditions and, because if I get like a game plan dialed in and the conditions are slightly different, I still want to go run that pattern. And sometimes that could, be the wrong decision. So just fishing the conditions usually is the better case, even if it's something you don't want to go do. Like I didn't want to go do what I was really doing, but I had to fish those conditions on that lake to give myself the best chance possible. So
That's an interesting point that you mentioned because I mean the way I would see it, and again, I don't have the vast knowledge and experience. We talked about it. You've been fishing since you're 5 years old. I've been fishing for the last 5 years, bass fishing, I would say. Um, when you pre-fish, right, and you found something, now you're locked into that. You're like, all right, that's my game plan. This is what I'm gonna do. And then, like you mentioned, things just because something worked yesterday doesn't mean it's gonna work today
mhm.
or the day, especially when you're doing a 2 day tournament, it's gonna work, you know,
Yeah.
the day after. Um, but when you go with the no prior experience on the lake or pre-fishing, you're really relying on your instincts as an angler. So your decisions are going to be real time instead of pre-made or pre-arranged decisions that you did based on what happened yesterday or the day before yesterday. And I think that only you can only again I go back to this. You can only do this if you've been bass fishing most of your life.
Yeah, I would agree. Just getting that experience and kind of, knowing what to do in certain situations and certain conditions, and honestly having an understanding of, bass and what they do at certain times of the year and what they're looking for and keying in on. And, there's so much, so many factors and variables which will dictate, a certain bite or technique or pattern or something like that. So it's very crucial information to be out there all the time and really just kind of taking it all in and seeing what works for you and adjusting as needed.
Yeah, and again, for those that are watching, listening, it's not to say that pre-fishing doesn't work. Yes, of course it works, and I definitely want to pre-fish if you get the chance. But
Hmm.
that's the, I mean, the maybe the disadvantage of pre-fishing is that once tournament starts, you're locked in into what you thought is going to work that worked yesterday,
Hmm.
while the conditions might have changed. And sometimes bass are not there that the next day. Maybe
Yeah.
they're not, or even they're there, they don't feel like feeding that next day. Especially in Texas, where we get so much, weather changes from
Hmm.
one day to another. It's like the old cliche with Texas: if you don't like the weather, come back in 2 hours,
Exactly.
kind of thing. So that really comes into effect, and I'm sure you can say that for a lot of states out there. Um, you mentioned that this is your biggest total. Do you feel like this is the best? I mean, totals can be subjective. Like you can have 101 inches on a lake where the fish are just biting anything that you throw at, and you don't get that satisfaction of maybe figuring it out. And yet you can win a tournament with 89 inches on a day where nobody can figure out, or most people can't figure out the bite, and you have to really work for it, and you have to really figure it out. When you compare this total of 101 inches in this tournament, how does it compare to the rest of the tournaments you fished? Like, do you feel like this is your best performance, or do you feel like there were other times where the bite was a lot harder and you feel more satisfaction, even though it's, well, maybe a smaller bag?
um that's a good question. I mean, for me, I think that one in the certain way I want it. And again, not having any pre-fishing and no knowledge of the lake, that made it really special. And then to see some of the anglers out there that struggled, that are very good sticks and have experience on that lake, it just made it a little bit more special. So I would say it'd be really close up there with my best performance as far as, like, fishing days. But I really do like those good grinder days where you truly have to figure it out. It's not a slugfest. I think those wins are a little bit more meaningful sometimes, because you truly figured it out where no one else did. Granted, Brownwood was, most people I ran into during the day still were kind of struggling. Granted, it showed out on the fish, like the overall size of fish, but the quantity, depending on who you talk to, is still kind of hard to come by. I think I only caught 12 fish all day. So that's about some people might say that's average. People say that's good. For my style, I think that's pretty good because I'm covering a lot of water in a day, and I'm not fishing for giant schools of fish. So 12 fish in a day is pretty well for me. But yeah, I think yeah.
Well, going back to how it shaped out of 77 anglers, there were 270 fish caught. So that's not a lot considering it's
Yeah.
it sounds like the top heavy big bass kind of like fool's gold. You think it's like, oh my god, this lake was showing out. Yeah, it had more than a handful of like big bass that you normally don't see
Mhm.
that amount. But overall, not that many people caught a limit.
Right.
So it was kind of like misleading in ways. Um, of all the well, let me ask you this: what's been your biggest bass that you've ever caught on a tournament?
Biggest bass is 9.9 in weight. That was 23.5 inches, but
99.
by length, yeah, I haven't broken double digits yet.
And that sounds kind of disappointing, right? You said like, oh man, I caught a 9.9. It's like, yeah, it's awesome. It's like, yeah, but is that 0.1?
Yeah,
Could I just get 1.1?
Right. It definitely crossed my mind when I was weighing it. I was like, oh, it's so close, but it's so hard to be disappointed. Like, this is the biggest fish I've ever seen. So, and it was only 23.5 inches long, so the girth was just ginormous. But actually, my biggest lengthwise is 24.25, and it was only about 7.5, and it was actually out here on a local river. So, I haven't broken the DD yet. I'm hoping too soon. We'll see.
Well, you scratched off the century mark
Yes.
out of your bucket list, so that DDs should be coming at any moment. Hopefully on the tournament, right?
I hope that would make it really special. Actually, it's kind of weird this year. I've just felt like the century mark was right there, and to go out there to Brownwood and do it's like, what the heck, you know?
I still can't believe you hadn't made the century mark.
I've had
for the first time.
I've had a lot of 90-inch bags, but nothing over 100 yet until Brownwood.
Previous to this, what was your biggest
I think 96 or 97.
Really? Not even 99?
No. And then I broke 99.5 last weekend on Stillhouse. So,
so you fished. This was after Brownwood.
This was the weekend. Tournament? Yeah, so Brownwood was one weekend, and then the following weekend was All-Star on Stillhouse.
Oh yeah, All-Star, yeah.
Yep.
What place did you get on that one?
I got second place with 99.5. The leader, Jared Parker, he had a 102.
Oh, 102, yeah.
Yeah.
Stillhouse, yeah, completely. Well, Stillhouse kind of one of those weird lakes because Stillhouse looks like a West Texas lake in the sense that it's all like rocky ledges and all that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's probably one of the grassiest lake you'll find in Texas.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have like Lake Athens where you just have this humid forest just surrounding the lake. This one is kind of like West Texas, mm-hmm. but again, a lot of grass everywhere on that lake.
It does. Usually has a lot of grass. Actually, there's a good amount of submergent grass depending on where you go. I didn't see anything topped out yet, just too early in the year. But now the water's completely full, or that lake's completely full now. So it's came up 11 foot since last weekend, which is ridiculous.
And remind me again, Stillhouse is the lake where you won the Lone Star Throwdown in 2021, right?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, I fished 4 tournaments on Stillhouse, and I have placed in 3 of them. Nice. I've won 3 checks out of them. So, yeah, but that was 2021 on Stillhouse.
Yeah, that was – I think you won it on Topwater Frog, wasn't it?
Yeah, Topwater Frog and a Whopper Plopper.
All topwater.
Yeah, all topwater.
And what about this weekend when you fished it? What was your – I mean, you got second place, but what was your,
It was chatterbait and then that 6-inch swim bait. I stuck with it because the reaction deal was in my mind. And again, I fished very similar to Brownwood where I fished the conditions and the wind blown banks, and that really helped with that bite.
Interesting. What was
Honestly,
your
I hooked. Okay, so I had 320s in my limit, and I'm like, "Are you serious? Is this gonna happen again?"
three
Like,
twenties?
yeah, I had three. I had a 21 and a half, a 20 and a quarter, and then a 20, and then I had 19, and then an 18 and three quarter. I couldn't get rid of the 18 and three quarter, but yeah, I was sitting there thinking midday. I'm trying not to freak out because, like, man, is it gonna happen again? Like, am I gonna bust the century two weekends in a row? And I didn't get to free fish Stillhouse either, so that's like a telltale sign. Like, I just went in there, did the same thing, and didn't have any, knowledge prior to what was gonna happen. So
That's cool.
yeah,
I want to talk a little bit about what you do with No Bad Days on the kayak. So you're involved in kayak bass fishing as far as tournaments and for your own personal enjoyment, but is you also run the No Bad Days on the kayak shop at New Brunswick. Is that
yes,
your 9 to 5? Is that your regular job now?
yes, sir. That is my 9 to 5. That's what I work 5 days out of the week. We're over here in New Braunfels, Texas, right at the Texas Ski Ranch for anyone local, right off 35 in between um, San Antonio and Austin. So it's kind of the middle, there. You pull a lot of traffic in, but it's a cool little spot, man. A good little vibe. It's like a family friendly environment. They've got live music from time to time. They've got a bar and grill. They got axe throwing. They got the wakeboard, of course. That's what they're known for out there. But man, it's a good little vibe, good little spot, and having the ability to do demos right out my back door is awesome. So, but yeah, I do run that store over there here in New Braunfels, Texas.
How do you get it? How do you landed that gig? Like, how did that come about?
Honestly, it kind of fell in my lap. Forrest Green, the owner, he actually reached out to me and said my name was thrown in the hat from several different people on who he thought should run his shop because here in New Braunfels, and several people knew that I lived here and that I wasn't doing another gig prior, working at a different kayak shop, and he called me up and asked me if I wanted to do it. And I was like, man, it's right down the road. Heck yeah, I do. So it worked out, man. It just kind of fell in my lap, I guess, based on my, experience and what I did prior. But it's been good, man. We've been there since last July. So not even a full year yet, but we moved in there last July.
And by the way, props to you because I think your reputation as an angler is only um, what's the word I'm looking for? Is only overshadowed by your reputation as a person. Like on and off the water, your reputation. Everybody that I've talked to has nothing but the utmost respect and accolades for what
That
you
means
do
a
on and
lot.
off the water, man.
That means a lot, man. And that's what I try to do. I try to, give everybody the respect they deserve because that's what I want in return. And, I just try to, just be a good guy. You know what I mean? And that boils down to making good friends and good relationships across Texas, wherever I'm at, whether it's at the boat ramp or, you come see me in the shop. But yeah, that's good to hear. I really appreciate that.
Any plans on going national on any of the trails, not just the locals, but travel a little bit out of state? Because I know you would catch some checks. Like that's pretty.
Man, I would love to, and I hope it is in the near future. We'll see. Now that I have my 2-year-old here, and then I got a 6-year-old daughter, it's kind of hard to get away
Yeah.
for those kind of trips. I start getting homesick after a couple of days, but yeah, we'll see. I definitely want to jump into some national events here in Texas, and then kind of branch out from there. So it might be a few years or so, but maybe next year, 2025, I'm hoping to jump in a couple of Texas national events. We'll see what comes out, but. I would love to, man. That'd be a dream to travel and fish competitively against some of the best guys in the nation.
Yeah, no, man, and you definitely qualify as one of the best guys here in Texas and across the nation, in my opinion, of course. Um, what's been your? Let's do a little rapid fire questions.
Mhm.
First of all, what's your big? Well, we already talked about what's your biggest bass. What's your favorite bait? Your go-to bait, confidence bait.
Favorite bait, man. If I could have one bait, I'd pick a chatterbait, 100% because of the way you can fish it, and it's just so versatile. You can fish it all year round. You can fish it in all depths. I mean, if I had one bait, and you can even work it different ways to make it slow down and certain things. So that's what I'd pick if I had one bait.
Any specific color, pattern, or trailer?
Um, Actually, it's so your typical shad patterns, your whites, your silvers, grays, whatever you have. But I go through a couple different ones I like. I actually cycle out between a thunder cricket, the jackhammer,
Really?
and a slobber knocker. I think they're all a little different in their own little ways, and on any given day, I think one might be a little better than the other. Just based on experience and what I've seen, but I cycle them out. And as far as trailers, I use your typical Zaco style trailer. I don't do nothing crazy. Um, but yeah, that's just what I've always did. It's always worked. So don't change what's not broken.
Yeah, I think the Saco trailer is probably the best trailer
Mm-hmm.
um, for a chatterbait. I also like the striking rage tail. I think that's another one.
Yeah.
Those are my two. Like
Mm-hmm.
Saco, tail or the twin tail
The
on the
Menace.
the menace,
Yeah.
rage menace, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a
the
great
rage.
trailer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always get it confused. Rage tail and rage menace. Yeah, the
Yeah.
rage menace. Yeah, it's a great little trailer. I would highly recommend that. What is your favorite lake in Texas?
Favorite lake in Texas. To this point, I think Choke Canyon. Granted, it's really low and it's not fishing how it used to be. But as far as like how it's set up for my style, I loved fishing that lake, and then just the wildlife you see out there, with the alligators and all sorts of different things. It's a cool, fishy looking place. I think if I had to pick one, that would be it. But there's some close seconds. There's some close ones up there, but I like Choke Canyon.
Favorite rod reel combo.
Right now, my 7.3 medium heavy, moderate, feeling real Kistler rod. That's that chatterbait rod, and it just
Yeah.
allows it's a mix between fiberglass and graphite, and it allows those kind of baits to really load up. And I think that's a really crucial part of the puzzle when you're throwing those kind of baits and not ripping stuff out of their mouth. And I throw it on a 7.3 gear ratio SLX DC Shimano, and I love that combo.
Yeah, I've always thought that to me the best gear ratio for a chatterbait is 7.4.
Mm-hmm.
Anything more than that, I think you're speeding it up too much.
Yeah.
Which sometimes work.
Right.
It may work sometimes. Sometimes the reaction bite, if you're burning it, is key. But I think for the most part, there is such a thing as working that chatterbait too quickly.
Yes.
Because I think that, and especially when you're talking about the jackhammer, because I think that benefits more from a slower thump
Mhm.
than, for example, the slobber knocker. So
Mhm.
I've always chatterbaits, like you mentioned, are my favorite bait, and I always try to like see what the differences are between one and the other. And I think the biggest difference from you see the jackhammer or anything that cement does, it's more of a deeper thump, whereas the slobber knocker is more of a high pitch, quicker ping rate. I would say, by that I mean that so the I think the difference, what sets apart some of these chatterbaits now, and this is a rabbit hole about patents and all that. It used to be that the Seaman had a patent on the blade being attached directly to the jig head, and that's why their chatterbaits, in my opinion, were above, head and shoulders above the rest. Um, the Berkeley kind of found a way to navigate through the patterns, and so basically is on the jackhammer, that blade hitting the jig head has more of a travel, has to travel a little bit more. It's so the sound it makes, it's more of a wider range. Where I think the slobber knocker, because the blade goes directly through the middle of the head, it vibrates quicker.
Mhm.
And in my opinion, what I've seen is on the slobber knocker, I can get away with using or burning it using maybe like an 8.1, 8.5 gear ratio.
Mhm.
And on a jackhammer, I benefit more from using like a 7.4 gear ratio. In my experience, I don't. That's what makes sense in my head. I don't know the science behind it. I don't know if there's any data that'll back me up what I'm saying, but that's what I feel about it.
Just firsthand experience. That's what
Yeah,
you got to go off of.
yeah.
But yeah, they are different actions, different in their own different ways. I think you're right. Yeah, the blade has to travel a lot further from side to side to hit the head on the jackhammer. And the slobber knocker, it has it doesn't have to travel as far, and it has a different sound because of the way it hits the head. So
Yeah.
they're just different in their own ways, and I think they have a place here and there, but they're both good on any
Yeah,
certain.
no, they're both good. And I think there is such a thing as like if you're fishing a tournament and, for example, a jackhammer has been used, it's a little bit more popular. So chances are, if anybody's fishing ahead of you or pre-fish that area, more than likely to use a jackhammer, and
Yeah.
that may play a part where it's like, oh, this is a different sound. I'll bite this one instead. Who
Yep.
knows? Again, I'm not a marine biologist. This could be BS for all I know.
We like to believe it in our head. I'll tell
I
you.
know we like to believe it. We make ourselves some stories
Right.
and some logical stuff just to make ourselves feel better about how much we spend on tackle. That's just the reality of it.
Absolutely.
What's next on your agenda? What are you looking to do next? Both, tournament or maybe with your new job as running No Bad Days on the water.
Yeah. So next for me, tournament wise, we have actually the 18th. That's next Saturday. I'm going to be fishing the West Texas kayak fishing over there on San Angelo Roadrunner. So within a certain mile radius, there's multiple different bodies of water in play, rivers, lakes. So I'm going to fish that one, and then the weekend after, there's a frog-only tournament on Bass Drop for
I
kayak
heard
San
about that one.
Antonio. I'm going to do that one, and then I think the following weekend after that is All-Star on Choke Canyon. So got a full pack schedule these next couple weeks, and going to get after it.
So many trails popping up here in Texas. I try to bring from all winners from all of them on the podcast because I want to highlight all of them. North Texas, West Texas, Texas Kayak Bass Leagues, East Texas with Lance McWhorter, Texas Bass Nation, All Star, Red River. I mean, there's so many trails here in Texas you pick and choose from.
There's so many, and there's so much good talent from each individual trail. So it's cool to see, kind of hear what people are doing and how they're doing certain things. And, whether you fish one across the West or the one across the East. I mean, and some people try to do them all, some people try to do them all, but it is cool that you try to cover everybody and get them their recognition and get to talk about what they did. So I like it. I enjoy it.
Yeah, the camaraderie in the community here in Texas is amazing. It's always has, and hopefully it'll always will be.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I got a chance to fish with two good friends of mine today in the West Texas League, and I mean, the bite wasn't great, but the camaraderie and talking to people, hanging out with your friends is beats a day on beats a day at work any day.
Oh,
Maybe not your
any day.
work because you have a pretty good job, but definitely. JR, thank you so much for taking the time, and I don't want to keep you too long. I know you have family, so I really appreciate the time that you invested to come onto the podcast. If there's any questions from our people that are watching or listening, feel free to put it on the comments. Otherwise, we'll be heading out for the day. But before we do, JR, I'll give you a few minutes to shout out anybody you want to shout out, or companies that make your kayak fishing experience a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the time to do so. First and foremost, as you hear a lot, my wife, she takes care of the kiddos when I'm gone, and I know that everything is good to go when I'm away from home. And No Bad Days Kayak, we do a lot over there, and I'm grateful for the opportunity that we have. We got 2 locations, one in Pflugerville, one in New Braunfels. So if you're in the area locally and you're needing something kayak-wise, accessory-wise, or wanting to demo, get a hold of me, let me know, and I'd be glad to put you in something, and we'll get you in the right boat. As far as companies, Kistler Rods, I've been using their rods for a handful of years now, and love their product. As a kayak angler, we beat the crap out of stuff, and I don't have any issues with those rods. And if you've seen some of my videos, you know that I'm kind of rough, and I'm boat flipping most fish, no matter the size, and they hold up, man. They're great rods. Z-Pro lithium. They power my Newport vessels in K180 and allow me to go all day. I put miles and miles on that thing, man. Those two companies and products really allow me to kind of get out and do my thing, man. So those are ones I'd like to shout out.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. For those that are watching or listening, if you're listening on MP3 formats on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, feel free to leave us a review and rate our podcast. We really appreciate it. Go check our sponsors for the podcast, Norsk Lithium. You can hit the link on my bio, whether you follow me on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram. Douglas Outdoors, Great Rods, Dark Horse Tackle, Catch Outdoors, and also Mariner Sales, which I partnered up with earlier this year. Great. I know we had no bad days on the kayak, but also if you're not from Brunsfield, you're more from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, come see us at Mariner Sales.
Dude, it's all good. We're all good in the hood. We try to help out each other, so it's cool to see us both helping out where it's needed. So.
And shout out to Joe, Lancilotti. Yes, sir, to Kistler Rod. So I'm assuming Joe is either affiliated directly with Kistler Rod or a big fan of Kistler Rod. But either way, great rods, though.
Yep.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. If you're going to be on the water, for your PFDs. And thanks again for joining us, JR. Good luck on the rest of the tournaments, man.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it, Armando. I hope to come back on soon.